Folks, welcome to the Women of Water Get Real virtual summit on where we are leaking women from the water career pipeline, where and why, and how do we keep them in the water workforce, and how do we get them back if we lose them, and just generally how do we create a better work experience for women in water related professions. And we have talked to so many different types of professions: engineers and scientists and lawyers and operators and plumbers. And now we're going to talk to the woman who is literally in the water, uh, multi-gold medal winner, Nancy Hogshead-Makar. You recognize the name Nancy Hogshead, you probably remember her. Nancy, thank you so much for being here. And tell us a little bit about where you got started in the water. How'd you get in the water?
No, probably just like the way most people do, that my parents just wanted to make sure that I wouldn't drown, that we would be safer around swimming pools. So my dad's mentor, they had a pool in their backyard. We've never had a pool, and right. So and I remember like having the floaty on my back, and when I was 7, my parents enrolled us into swim classes. And my very first coach ever was Eddie Reese, who is now the most decorated coach. She's probably had on the order, maybe 150 Olympians at this point. But at that point, he was probably 24 years old, maybe. And but he made it fun, and he already knew good technique. So I really got lucky.
Very nice. And it's funny. We for the last 10 years, after my career as a water engineer and hydrogeologist and water policy specialist, I started doing this online, education and media and events around water, and started really noticing that we talk about water citizen as a people passionate about water. It's a human side of water, and so often when people who work in water, men and women, and everything in between, they're in water in all cases. They swim, they fly fish, they take their vacations on the water. It's like they paint in watercolors. It's just water on the brain. So I'm sure we if we've got any other swimmers out there, go ahead and type in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, and if you remember Nancy from her victories in the pool. Now you also have developed this whole career path around Title IX and women in in sports, and so we're going to talk a little bit about this because and obviously that's not you're focusing on sports, and a lot of people focus on sports with Title IX. But can you tell us just kind of generally what is Title IX, and is it just sports?
Okay, Title IX is a federal statute that requires that schools that receive federal funds, which is most private and public schools, that they agree, if they want to get those tax dollars, that they have to agree not to discriminate based on sex. So we know there are a lot of ways to discriminate against people because of their sex, because they're either male or female. And so Title IX turned 50 June 23rd, just last year, 2022. So we're still in the 50th anniversary year of Title IX, and it has done wonders for the entire workforce. I mean, water, like as you were saying, I think I agree with you that there's something about our brains that feels good around water, for whether you're swimming in it or you're in a boat or you get to see it or whatever. But it's just no coincidence that people like to live along coastlines, and that having a water view is amazing. I'm not getting any political support or anything for this, but on Instagram there is an account that really speaks to my soul, and it's called swimming.com, and it's spelled out swimming, DOTCOM, and they have the most beautiful underwater swimming or drills or whatever. But so if you like water at all, you will love that Instagram account.
And I've run across over the years a lot of athletes and Olympic athletes that have water related sports, or they're canoeing, they're sailing, they're skiing, that they become aware of environmental issues that affect water because they are out and in it so much, right?
Right. It was a huge issue in the open water swimming for the Rio Olympics back in 2016. Absolutely. I think athletes really understand, it's not just being connected to water, but, all athletes are really impacted by pollution in general, right? So what they're breathing in and out, what they're, exposed to, and are there places they can go for runs, et cetera. But if I could just take it back quickly over to Title IX. So after the Olympics, I went on after Eddie Reese to go win 3 gold medals and 1 silver medal at the 1984 Olympics. So I was a 1980 Olympian, but remember, we boycotted those Olympics. We didn't get to go. 4 years later, got to swim. And I have to say, it was the joy of a lifetime. It was just a privilege to be able to be there. I knew I wanted to work on something to do with women, and I was already a feminist, and I wanted to make sure that women had opportunities. So what we know, and what you and I know, Kat, is how that participating in sports, how that it leads people into these non-traditional careers, that going into, the STEM and science careers, whatnot, are, when somebody breaks gender stereotypes, I think it's good for everybody that, we don't have women or girls into very narrow boxes, that what it means to be female, what it means to be a woman, is you can do anything, right? That it's not, right? And sort of, I think sports is something where people, where women in particular, they use their bodies for purposes of their own that are not about being sexualized for the male gaze, that it is for themselves. And learning about that, like, we know, like, what we were talking about right before we jumped on is just how much more successful that athletes are, that not just getting into water degrees, right, but they're also much more likely to go to college, finish college, go on to grad school, get better grades, right? So educationally, it's unbelievable. Employment wise, again, it's unbelievable what that shit means on somebody's resume as being being an athlete. And it's something that people can understand. Okay, this person, like the things that you have a hard time learning on a blackboard, like how to win, how to lose, how to postpone short-term gratification, right, for long-term rewards, how to be part of a team, right? So the employer knows that, and we know that athletes, female athletes in particular, make 8% more than their non-athlete counterparts. So what it means for somebody economically, and then health-wise, oh my gosh, like half of all women over the age of 65 suffer from osteoporosis. I would say it's probably higher for women like us who are white and who are, sort of on the low fat area, as opposed to women of color. But in addition, there's diabetes and heart disease, and, then all the mental health things of cutting, and right. So athletes, unquestionably, mental health and physical health wise, it really helps somebody for the rest of their lives. It is one of, I always say to parents, one of the most profound decisions that you can make for your daughters, to make sure that they have a sports experience, that they understand what goes into it.
Absolutely. And we actually connected because when I was a college student at Dartmouth and in government, I did an internship at the Women's Sports Foundation. And actually did a research project while I was there. I was a rugby player, which is an incredibly empowering sport when you're, in contact sports, that it's just to have that confidence to know that you can go in and you can land a tackle. right? Um, some of the things you mentioned in terms of just resilience, being knocked down and get back up, because it is an 80-minute game and you got to finish the game no matter what. You got to keep yourself going, right? How to play as part of a team, how to be conscious. If someone's going to be a project manager on an engineering project, you want someone who is a rugby player who can keep track of all these different things that are going on around them, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of benefits, and I actually did a little research project during my internship on the benefits, and then there was Games Mother Never Taught You, and I think there was like one other book that had just come out. There wasn't a lot out, but you would see women who succeeded often had some kind of athletic background, often continued to be somehow athletic, keep themselves in shape, be fit to work long hours and work with the demands, mental and physical and emotional demands of working in a lot of these water related fields.
Right. Did you get to work with Marge Schneider when you were there?
You got it, Dr. Marge Schneider. That was it. That was it. We're still in
She's the
touch.
best. Yeah. Me
She's
too. Yeah.
phenomenal,
She's
phenomenal
phenomenal.
woman. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and so one of the things that we wanted to touch on, because we're looking at all of the parts of the career for women in STEM and or women in water, not just STEM, but law, economic analysis, policy analysis, what have you. And in that, and often very traditionally, as well as operators and things, but often very traditionally, mostly male fields, that yes, Title IX allowed them to take the classes, but there's also a number of other issues that women face, and sometimes people just look at the numbers and the percentages and say, hey, they're going up, we don't have, it's not discrimination anymore if you can't prove, people are flipping Title IX. They're saying that unless you can prove that not just historic discrimination but discrimination today, then we need to get rid of all these women in engineering, women in whatever. Some of these programs are at risk right now, and certainly gender studies, we're seeing that in Florida right now. I mean, what does that do with Title IX if it's just about the numbers, when we already know that 30-40% of the women who get engineering degrees leave within 10 years, if they even go into it, if they haven't already been turned off to these careers just from their experiences as college students or through their internships.
Yeah, if women are leaving a particular career, it sounds like they are in water world, then the industry needs to look at itself and what is it doing. It's way too easy to blame the woman. Oh, they want to have children, or they want it, and that's wrong. That if you want to make a difference in it, it cannot be that women are just independently choosing not to be in these careers, because they go on to other careers and find places where they can be successful. So I would say, sexual harassment and sexual abuse, being objectified, is a way that males who are insecure in particular they deploy that to get women out of the game. I had almost the exact same experience when I was working in big law, and I was at a big law firm, and the head of litigation said that women should not be litigators. What do you do? You're going to find a place where you can better succeed. So for me, I moved into academics. But was I working less hard? Was I doing things that weren't as challenging? Absolutely not. Right. So I founded a nonprofit, Champion Women, and our task is we provide legal advocacy for girls and women in sports. So whether that's equal opportunities to play, whether that's sexual harassment and abuse, once they get playing, one of our major issues is coach on athlete abuse, kind of like boss on employee abuse, and then the making sure that girls and women's sports stays for females. So those are our big three issues that we're really focused on. And, you know, let's take that first issue. So right now, women are being denied about 180,000 opportunities in sports. The average, it's not sort of evenly distributed, but the average is a little over 100 athletes per school in the country. So that's about 4 new teams in every school in the country on average, right? So some schools a lot more, like UNC Chapel Hill, need to add 360 more women to its athletic department, as opposed to, you know, others are much, much less. So
That's
in
where people
addition,
get into the questions about whether they have to drop a male team to add a women's team or whatever, that women, that there has to be equal numbers or equal resources, or with the sports teams themselves.
yeah. So so Title IX, because right, it prohibits discrimination based on sex. If a school wants to, it is permissible, but it is not required in any way. You have got to answer this question as many times as I have, 500,000 times, which is that if they're not required to do that, but you know, it's not women's fault. Like I like to use the analogy of, I have a son who's 22 and he has twin sisters who are 17. When the girls came along, his standard of living went down. But was he being discriminated against, or did he just have to share resources with more people? And you know, you've got to share resources with more people. Like, would men have more if women didn't exist at all? You know, possibly, but the law says that you have to give women equal opportunities. You've got to treat them the same way, right? So they got to travel the same way and whatnot. And then they have to have equal scholarship dollars. And what I find is, like, when we have a project right now called 50 by 50. So we want to get at least one Title IX lawsuit going in every state. And you know, when women can speak up for themselves when it comes to their school, it will be much easier for them to speak up for themselves when they are sexually harassed, or when they, you know, something else comes up. They right. So right. We want to, the women who have done it. And actually, if you go onto our website at Title IX, at championwomen.org. So if you look at under the references, Dartmouth women or said the nicest things about how we, as I describe it, you know, we kind of get the party started. I don't do the litigation, but they really felt great about being sort of the Rosa Parks of their school. The big players on enforcement have kind of left the field. So is the NCAA going to do anything if a school is discriminating against women? No. Are the conferences? No. Right. So it leaves 18 to 22-year-old women who are then going to go out into the workforce. I'll never forget kind of when I kind of understood this idea that not just that sexism was this hypothetical, that you know, it existed out there in the world, but that it was always going to impact me if I didn't do something about it. That until it got better for all women, that was going to impact me. I thought I could, by being a great swimmer, I was at Duke University, I just thought I could kind of achieve out of sexism. And I think a lot of women try that game, like you said, like, right, they go into the water professions and then they leave, like because they see, like, oh, right, if I can't be successful here, then I'm not going to stay. So it's going to take some leadership on the part of the water world for them to recognize, like, what do they need to change systemically so that women don't leave? How can they be successful?
Yeah. And yeah, that it's not just let's cram more into the pipeline. Let's go inspire seventh grade girls and teach them that water is fun and science is, the water is important, science is fun, and you two could have a career in water and recruit them into the majors. And then, if they're experiencing harassment, differences in discipline based on sex, LGBTQ issues, pregnant and parenting student issues, uh, you know, um,
Right,
certainly within STEM, what's,
right.
within these fields, the random comments I would get from professors and, yeah, of course
Like
you're
what?
doing
Like what were your,
environmental
give me,
law, but
yeah,
yeah, well,
give me an
like,
example of a random comment that,
like when I was starting my civil engineering bachelor's, and I had gone back to school for that. Yeah, my parents actually wouldn't let me study engineering, even though my mother was, a card carrying Fred de Gloria, Biz magazine reading feminist and a medical doctor, a pioneer in her field, that still had this idea that women aren't as good in science and math, and I wouldn't do well. And so, but I was really drawn to doing that work, got my second bachelor's in geology, almost got a third bachelor's in civil engineering. I was summa cum laude. I was tau beta pi. I was accomplishing, like you said, accomplish out that. Yeah, if we,
right.
what do I need to do? Okay, if I need to do this, I'm going to do it. And now I'm qualified. Oh, well, now there's another hurdle. Okay, I do that. Now I'm qualified. I've got a master's. I've got a PhD. I've got this. I've got that. I've got, a professional geologist license. I'm qualified for a professional engineer's exam. What do I need to do? And and eventually got to an office where guys were just very overtly, would make comments about, I was transferred up to an office where I was, asked to lead, as a project manager, because all the men had been promoted up to, principal or associate, or had been hired away by the clients. It was a boom period. We're in a boom period right now with a lot of money into water and the environment and climate and whatnot, infrastructure. And a lot of the, more junior engineers, it was all women, just about all women.
Mhm,
And so they needed a
mhm,
woman to manage that team. And we would come running in to grab some coffee in the break room. We had a big department, so we had our own floor and our own break room. And the guys would be, the associates would be lounging around, and they'd see us and say, "Oh, we were just talking about this article we read about how damaging it is to young children if their mothers are working, if they're under 5, in front of women who are pregnant, in front of women who had young children at home, in front of women who are about to get married and start families." And they'd come crying in my office. I was the only woman with a door. And Kat, when are you going to do something? And
mhm.
it's a huge pressure,
It is.
to be that spokesperson. And I never thought I was going to be, that wasn't my thing. I wasn't going to be, I was going to be focused on being an engineer, on being a water professional. And, I
Right.
never, I
So,
knew
so,
this.
so when did it switch for you?
Well, I basically, um, I eventually did talk to, and I kind of, when I moved up there, it actually, one of the things that appealed to me was the fact that they had a women's affiliate group, which I later found out was actually created by the men, because some consultant had said, "Hey, did you realize that whenever a woman becomes an associate, she leaves the firm, or is eligible to become an associate, she leaves the firm?" And they, "Oh, well, women must just not know how to become an associate." We promoted a secretary to being an associate to organize this women group, and to have these brown bags on our own time to learn how, what are the requirements and all that stuff. And I found that out later, after stuff hit the fan, that basically I finally sat down with the principals for the water engineering group and said, "Hey, there's some concerns about this and that." And the guy who had recruited me didn't say anything. The other guy went off the wall. It was just, "This is complete bullshit. This group, this women's group, it's a secretive organization because it didn't have a reporting structure. And we don't know anything about it. And we have families too. We have safety concerns too. you, because it was things like, putting a light in the parking lot, stuff like that. And we want you to take a look, our department is 50-50. And it's like, well, okay, well, if you're counting all the secretaries, the CAD operators or whatever. And so they asked me to write a memo, to do an analysis, very short memo. And it just kind of broke down, who was at what level. And it had a little bar chart. It had, level 1, 2, and 3, all women. And, and me, the one person at level 4, and then, 5, 6, 7 were all men. And within 3 months, I was promoted to level 5, first woman eligible to become an associate. 3 of my level 3s were promoted to level 4 project managers. The younger guys who had been a problem and made a lot of comments were put in charge of signing off on projects that I'd worked on for 2 years, started creating delays, started saying, okay, I found a problem on page 6 of this, 600-page report. You have to reprint the whole thing, and it has to have the new date on the bottom, and, adding to the cost for our clients, or I'm not going to approve this unless you add this whole other thing that wasn't part of the original scope, because I want to promote this to the agency. And then, I went on a study tour in China, helping to promote the company, and these guys went to the associates, went to the principals and associates as associates themselves, and came up with some grievances that were never communicated to me. And it was, I came back straight from the airport, jet lagged as all hell, and I 4:45, I get a call to go into HR, and I was put on this double secret probation, and no word why, but and so, I mean, it can happen that fast. It
Right,
really can
exactly.
happen that fast.
I'm so sorry, Kat. Yeah, I hate hearing stories about
Yeah.
how well prepared, competent, women who really should be thriving on every metric, and how easy it is to derail them. Yeah.
Right. In some ways, what was even worse was when I went out on my own, and suddenly when I started going to conferences without a logo of a big firm or an agency on my business card, suddenly it's like tailhook conventions. It was hands everywhere. It was guys trying to put, people I'd known for years. And and obviously this is a little while ago, but I still hear
Yeah, but
things like this
I wish
coming
I
up.
could say
And
that the calls that I'm getting, that it's not happening anymore. I wish I could say that, but it's
right.
so pernicious. Yeah.
And of course, when we're talking about women in college and they're trying to, compete with their male, they're alongside their male counterparts in these very demanding degrees in science, in engineering, in technology.
Right.
When you get these degrees, one of the things they don't talk is that if that career path isn't open to you, you can't go back to getting a job as an admin assistant, or people, oh well, you wouldn't want this, you're an engineer. There's it just kind of cuts off other options. And
Right.
you're
And way too many women take it very personally, like they did something wrong, and until you hear 1,000 stories like this. Like, as a civil rights lawyer, I've heard so many of these very, very painful. They're not just painful for you, Dr. Schreier. They're painful for all women who want to see women succeed. And just how, anyway, it's not personal. It is that a lot of work needs to be done.
Well, and there is this, one of the reasons we did this summit is to make sure. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say that when it comes to employment, it's a lot of times it's really hard to prove that somebody was being discriminated against because of their sex. That's really, really hard to prove, as opposed to is a school discriminating against women because of their sex in sports? Sports are formally sex segregated. We have men over here and women over here. And so it's easy to make that comparison between those two to, like, as I was saying, women are missing out on 180 opportunities. They're missing out on almost $1 billion in college scholarship dollars. There's really no justification. There are 3 ways that schools can show that they are meeting Title IX, that they're providing enough opportunities. But I can assure you, most of these schools can't meet the other 2 prongs. They have to be providing the same percentage of the student body that's playing sports, right? They have to be doing that. And my thing is, if you can't do it in places where it's so easy to measure, then you're in trouble. Then, like, how can you do it when it comes to employment? How can you do it when it comes to hiring and firing fairly? If you are intentionally giving women a lesser educational experience than you're giving men, that, like, it doesn't just send a signal to the women athletes. It also sends a signal to the male athletes. It also sends a signal to the school overall. People can see the differences between the men's soccer field and the women's rugby field. They can see the differences in how the men and women basketball teams are treated. There's no legal justification. The students that we talk to, and we've talked literally
some of the gaslighting kind of things. I mean, there's a study that National Academy of Sciences did, big report on this, and there was a film that came out called Picture a Scientist, and one of the case studies was this group of women academics at MIT who were getting smaller labs. They were getting less facilities. They were getting, and people were like, oh, no, that's not true. And that the women were actually physically measuring their offices to show that it was less. And and finally, and often, with stigma, I mean, a lot of times, we're not the pre-law folks. Yeah, these are, they might be a little more quiet. They might be a little more introverted. They may not, be out there fighting. And so the women at MIT actually were able to do something because they all banded together, these faculty. And it took a long time and effort, and there was a scene
effort,
in the
and
movie
it's all on women's backs to make it better for the next generation. Like, we're asking basically every woman to be a Rosa Parks. Every woman has to stand up and say, I deserve equal educational opportunities. And that includes sports. It includes making sure that I'm not discriminated against because if I get pregnant, it make sure that or parenting, it makes sure, sexual harassment and sexual abuse are not issues that these are, it's again, asking all women to be Rosa Parks is asking a lot. As you said, at MIT, they're not lawyers, they're not civil rights folks, and yet it took all of them together.
How many more papers would she have published? How much more contribution? How much contribution would I have made in this field after all these degrees to be able to actually contribute without dealing with harassment? In one case, I had really started to build my practice around work in aquifer storage recovery. Something I'd been working on for over 10 years. Had been on the National Academy of Sciences Study Committee. I was starting to get some contracts, and there was a guy who was trying to get in that field. He kept, wanting to have lunch with me and telling me about his marriage falling apart or whatever. Finally, hit on me, and I turned him down. And next thing I knew, I was kicked off of speaking engagements. People weren't returning my calls. I was completely just blackballed from that whole arena. And part of it is in water and the environment. It is very public sector dominated, very concerned about, not having anyone with any sort of scandal or whatever. And it is very easy to blackball someone and to
Mm.
start spreading rumors and to to say that someone is not not our kind, not someone that we want to have involved in it. And next thing you know, the contracts dry up, the opportunities, the job offers dry up. And
Right.
and of course there's no way to prove any of that. We're all wearing body cams in case somebody tries to, like, grope us or something.
Yeah, I don't know any woman that doesn't have a story, something like that, where their sex interfered with them being able to get ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And it's not that these guys have raging hormones and they can't help themselves. It is, as you said, it is often something that is part of a power play. Right. Let's see if
well,
I can throw this woman
yeah,
off
yeah.
her
So
game.
what I want to see is more there's phenomenal men out there that absolutely understand what's going on. But I need them to take it on the way that you had to take it on, right? I want them to be the ones to be measuring the offices, and them to be the ones to right, because they hear these sexist comments and they can stop it. If women could stop it, it would have been done, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
enroll the really good guys, and they're definitely out there. But
Yeah.
for them to see their role in perpetuating these sexist tropes, that when you're suddenly not getting work, to be able to call into a great guy male group to have one of them advocate on your behalf, and to
Yeah.
have them on your LinkedIn profile to say nice things about you and how thorough you are and on time and what a great team player you are. And right, so they right, we yeah,
Yeah.
there's still a
Yeah.
lot to do,
Yeah.
and there's a place for really great guys to help us.
And a lot of us, especially those of us who went into these fields, and as well as going into sports, because there is a
Yeah.
discipline, and that it is a masculine approach of it's not just all about relationships or we get along with everybody on the team. If you've got to win the meet, you got to win the meet. If you got to
Yeah.
show up at practice, you got to show up at practice. It is mission oriented, right? It
Right.
is goal driven, same as working in water and the environment, very goal driven, mission driven
Right.
work. And so a lot of us, I like working with the guys. I was much more for years. I was much more comfortable working with men than with women. I kind of had to learn that over the years to be better at working with women teams. But I was always, our generation, we tucked our hair up under our hat and tried to be one of the boys, right?
Mhm.
And if you want to do the cool, fun things that the guys got to do, and so for us to we really count on those guys that were part of the team, and there's sort of this assumption that if you just tell your stories, everything will be okay. Or if
Mm.
if the guys just knew better, if they were just conscious of the issues, they'd be okay. And there's when you have really good guys and they know someone and you're trying to tell them, this guy did something.
Mm.
Oh no, I know that guy. We hung out at the at the bar and had a drink together at a conference, and I would never do anything like that. I can't imagine he would do anything.
Right, right,
And people
right.
just don't see it, right?
I mean, look, I mean, it doesn't take very much looking around. So you've got Weinstein, you've got Prince Andrew, you've got you know, people who have been thwarting women's lives and careers for a long time. And how do
Mhm.
we get the Weinstein shorter, right? So that it doesn't take so many women coming forward. It doesn't take these Herculean efforts to get the bad guys out. I was expert witness in the Larry Nasser case. And until the numbers got to be about, just so Larry Nasser sexually harassed or abused over 500 athletes. Most of them were gymnasts, but certainly not all. And he did it sometimes right in front of parents, etc. But until the number got to be about 50 athletes, the gymnastics community was supporting him. They were not supporting the women. And you just cannot be that it takes that kind of horsepower in order to be able to get a molester out of sport or out of business. It's the same thing with my Olympic coach, right? Who I should love and I should be appreciative of. He's now on the banned list. He was having sex with one of my teammates. He didn't touch me, didn't come on to me, but he married, as far as I know, at least 3 of his swimmers. The total marriage of those 3 swimmers did not equal 1 year. And it was a way of validating the sexual abuse that had started when the girls were like, 16 or so. So that now when they were married, it like, well, right. So it made it sort of okay. And it's not okay. And, I just saw it way too much. So as I was saying, in the Larry Nassar case, so it empowered so many other women to come forward. As a result of Larry Nassar case, the Olympic Committee started a new entity that's kind of like the United States Anti-Doping Association. And over here, you've got the issue of sexual abuse. So it's the United States Center for Safe Sport. So how do you get molesters and the bad guys out of sport? I personally, right now, am being sued for $250 million by a coach who has molested lots of his athletes. And he didn't like it. That, typically the Olympic sports world and the school sports world, like NCAA, high school, et cetera, those 2 groups a lot of times don't talk to each other. So the Olympic world knew, the education world did not. So we wrote letters to all these schools and saying, hey, don't have this guy come to your school. And he's suing me, my organization, Champion Women, and he's also suing this other woman that should not be being sued. But the issue is like he's using the court system to try to silence not just me, but try to silence the entire volleyball community. And the whole his name is Rick Butler, and you can go to my GoFundMe page, and we really need help. So far, we've already spent over $50,000. And right, but it's a tactic that he is using to keep not just keep me quiet, but what it does is it makes people not want to have to take a side, right? Like you said, oh, I know him, he would never do that. That is exactly what happened with the Catholic Church. That's what happened in Boy Scouts. That's what happened in virtually all of these gigantic sexual harassment and abuse cases, is that the abuser is also a really good groomer of the entire community, right? Everybody just thinks that, they're a great person, and, innocent until proven guilty is a sentiment that only applies in one place, and that is criminal law. If you're going to put somebody in prison, it doesn't apply if you're going to lose your job. It doesn't apply if you're going to get kicked out of sport, that's what the United States Center for Safe Sport is supposed to do. You can, they do an investigation, they hold a hearing, they have a list. Right now, you can go on to the United States Center for Safe Sport and you can find out who are the people that have been banned. But the Olympic movement, which is 16 million athletes, it's not just 800 every 4 years, including the Olympic and Paralympic movement, is right. You want to be able to identify who those abusive coaches are and to make sure they don't have access to children anymore, that they don't have access. But knowing how hard it is, being sued for $250 million, knowing how hard it is, we all still have to do it. We're still asking all of us to be
Yeah.
Rosa Parks. We all need like our little Rosa Parks pin,
Mm.
to
Yeah.
everybody's got to be standing up, everybody.
And
And
yet,
until we do,
water is a team sport, and you
right,
can't do it alone. And all these women go
right,
off and become coaches, or try to do a solo consultancy and find that they can't get into these big government contracts. Um,
right.
so or alternatively, you suck it up and stay in a job that just you're kind of stuck, or being someone's basically a work wife, assistant.
So Kat, here's what I'm seeing out of our conversation here is that in my screen, you're right here. So, but what I'm seeing is that I do it for sports, right? I make sure that in the sports world, that all the ways that you can discriminate against women, that we address those head on. And I'm seeing that in the water world, that might be you, to make sure that being a female, somebody's sex doesn't stop them from being able to be successful in the profession of waterworks. And I think it's a noble purpose.
Well,
And
and I hope that
I empower you full on.
me personally, because I am still, I've still got my career path ahead of me. I do want to still come back and be an engineer. I still want to go back and do NEPA studies. I still want to get back in. I want to be in public service. That's what I
Right,
got into this for. To work for the
right,
NOAAs and National Weather Services and Department of Interior and EPAs and all these.
right,
They're hiring like crazy. They've got all this big federal money. And they're like, oh, and the White House is telling us we have to be diverse. And so they're hiring really young people when
mm,
there are people who have experience who can't get in because of the way the hiring structure goes, and that if you stepped
right,
out you can't get back in, right? And
right.
and it's a waste of talent and capabilities of what we could bring to public service through water and the environment. And it's
100%.
and there
And
is
really,
that
and
pressure
care
to
for that
stay
next
silent.
generation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's
right,
pressure to stay silent, whether it's because, hey, you're playing for your country, or, you're working for the environment. And this is a more important thing than, the distraction of some kind of a, harassment or discrimination situation. And if organizations really want to retain women, to create some pathways that don't involve retaliation, right? That
mm,
that
right,
that isn't okay. We're going to close ranks around the organization against the person who's complaining, but actually say,
right,
okay, we value our employees enough to provide them a way to address issues like this when they come up, recognizing that it's part of society. Racism is part of society. Sexism is part of society. Homophobia is part of society. These things happen, and they happen within
right,
our organizations
100%.
as well. And
Right,
just to as scientists and engineers, we're problem solvers. We should recognize
right.
when a problem exists and do something with
Right.
that.
Right, right,
A
exactly, and
system
have processes, right? So like I said,
Mhm.
we created the whole United States Center for Safe Sport. I don't know if this is helpful or not, but let me just throw it out there that if somebody say brings a sexual harassment complaint and it turns out they can't prove that it actually happened, but
Mhm.
being retaliated against, suddenly not getting contracts, et cetera, getting fired, getting not getting demoted, whatever, that is as forbidden as the original harassment. So let's say somebody hypothetically is just dropped dead wrong. It didn't happen. Okay. So they had
Mhm.
whatever. So it did not happen. But when they reported it, they got retaliated against. That is sex discrimination. That is recoverable. That it requires, again, people being that Rosa Parks and going out and making sure that that does not happen again. So retaliation
Mhm.
is its own separate way that we protect whistleblowers. So even when we got the statute passed that creates the United States Center for Safe Sport, we got a provision not only that protects retaliation, but it says specifically that if somebody testifies as part of this the United States Center for Safe Sport process, that they cannot be sued for defamation, that they are protected. They can speak up about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, there you go.
It's I mean, and it's useful for people to know, and I'm glad we're sharing this. For me, I'm not going to go back and it's kind of trying to move forward, but and then especially for one of the things that came up in the Harvey Weinstein situation was that when you're dealing with actresses, you're dealing with solo consultants, freelance,
Right,
right? And therefore,
right.
a
Independent
lot of sexual
contractors.
harassment is only against an employer.
Right.
And so when women make that choice, be part of the great resignation, says, screw this, I'm going to go out and start on my own. Those protections are gone. And
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a
and with government contracting,
it's a rational decision to say, I'm not going to pursue Harvey Weinstein. It's just too big for me. Instead, I'm just going to go try to make movies over here, or I'm going to get into some other aspect of movie making. While it's rational, women still need whistleblowers to make it better for everybody else. I mean, it's awful that we expect the people who are the most harmed and the most damaged to be able to set that precedent to make it better for everybody else. But we do. We do.
Well, I don't know if I call myself a whistleblower just because I didn't take
you're
action.
talking about it.
I only, I did what I could.
Right. And you're asking me to come on here to,
Yeah.
talk about it some more. And I really appreciate this opportunity to address your community.
Well, I appreciate your being here and and just to recognize folks that often women are dealing with some of this stuff right at the beginning. And just because the numbers of women getting into these fields may be increasing, if they're dropping out of the field before they even graduate based on their experiences in the classroom or in an internship, or if they start working and then they're leaving, it isn't just because women have babies. It isn't just women need childcare and lactation rooms on site. There's got to be, if we really value women and not just, filling bodies, filling seats, really value women in the industry. Let's start taking care of them. So
absolutely.
Nancy Hogshead-Makar, thank you so much for being here. Giving us a little of your time, and really appreciate all the work that you're doing. And for those of you watching today, thank you for being here. Please come back and watch all of our talks. We've got an operator who actually did successfully sue for both discrimination and retaliation and got the promotion. There are people who are winning on this stuff. How she talks about how you keep records and things like that. It is possible to not just have to start over again at another organization or another office and whatnot. You have value and we want to see every woman succeed in working in water. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Nancy. Any last thoughts before you go?
Yeah, go to our website. Number one, championwomen.org. And the other one is, I'm going to share my screen very quickly. Oops, wait, share screen is, you can go on to Title IX schools. See that right there, up there? Go to Title IX schools and and it goes over every single school in the country. So you went to Dartmouth, right?
I did.
Okay, so this is University of Dartmouth. Okay, so they have 51% men, 51% women. In order to be providing women with equal opportunities in sports, Dartmouth needs to add 123 women. So they don't have college scholarships, but they also need to be adding over $6,000 in recruiting dollars. Well, just so it's not just you, we'll go to Duke.
That's UMass Dartmouth, as opposed to
wrong. It was the wrong Dartmouth.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was University of Massachusetts.
Okay. Yeah. Oops. Yep. I'll get there. We've got all kinds of great information here, if I do say so myself. So,
There we go. Dartmouth.
And so
Let's
you
see, Dartmouth
are,
College.
you are
Oh,
this one?
Dartmouth College. Yes,
Dartmouth
yes.
College. Okay. So 50% men, 50% women. In order to make the athletic department also be 50, 49%, they would need to add 51 opportunities, which is roughly 2 teams. That is, a badminton team and I'm not sure what all the sports are, but or maybe a wrestling team. In order for it to be equal, they need to add $132,000 in order to be equal there. You can play around with this quite a bit. Here's my school, Duke University. They need to add 107 women opportunities. They need to add about $1 million in college scholarships, right? You think of how many women go to school, or how many people. It's one of the biggest scholarship opportunities. University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. They need to add 100 or 354 opportunities and 7. So we need current students at University of North Carolina, at Dartmouth, at Duke to reach out to us, and I call it, we get the party started. And because as Dr. Schreier, we were just talking, until it is awful that we're asking them to do so much, but they really could make it better for all women forever. Yeah. Women, my generation, I just turned 60 last year. I'll be 61 in April, has worked so hard to make sure that women have the right to equality. But if women, for whatever reason, are not or cannot actually bring those, to enforce those rights, then it's all for nothing. I hate to say it.
And we see how quickly
it can reach out to us.
Take it away. Yes. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for being here, and really good to see you, and thanks for all the work you're doing. And folks, keep watching for more on Women of Water Getting Real. Thanks so much for joining us for this extraordinary conversation, one of 45 extraordinary conversations we had as part of the Women of Water Get Real virtual summit, where we explored where and why women are leaking from the water career pipeline, how we can stop those leaks, and even bring women back to water. I hope that you will enjoy all of these amazing interviews. If you don't have a chance to watch all of them during the summit, you have the opportunity to join us with a power pack and get lifetime access to all the videos, as well as an opportunity to join us for 30 days in a brand new community where we will dig even deeper in live facilitated conversations about some of the issues that are facing women in water. Look forward to seeing you there. Please join us at watercitizen.org/women, watercitizen.org/women for more information. See you again soon.